confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We're love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive the reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Nuh Ali. If the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and their temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace. So today we're going to talk about a group discussion which was chosen by the people. So who would like to kick it off? What are we talking about?
Okay. So the discussion in the room today started because last night I wrote I just wanted to write out my thoughts, and I wrote a paper called An Evaluation of Polygamy as a Technique to Stabilize Our Nation. Because the idea has been presented a lot, and I wanted to look into it. So what I've been doing is talking to other practicing nationals that practice this successfully. Not the way we're thinking it is, actually successfully. And it's a common thing in their community. And the advice that I was given, and I talked to a few married couples, and mostly men, because that's mostly who I come across because the women are at home. And the whole that I took from each of them was that we're doing it wrong. We're presenting it wrong.
Who's presenting it wrong?
Moors or, Asiatics in Northwest America. We're practicing polygamy the wrong way or presenting it the wrong way. So I've talked to people from Dubai, people just a part of the United Emirates, a Moroccan from a post office, a couple African nationals. So it's kind of a mixed group. And from what I got is they treat it more like a business than a family. They're making better choices as far as investments made. So the structure that they all have is that the man pays for 100% of the expenses of the family. And the women's, whatever they make or whatever education they have is their own choice and their own keeping for them and their children. And because it's treated more like a company, the more you provide for the family, which is the company, the more shares you add in, the more vote you get. So if a man pays 100%, then he almost has 100% of the vote. But keeping in mind that this is ran more like a company, every director of a company above them has a board of directors that dictates what their job description is and what they can and can't do. The board of directors would be the wives. So if the director is not fulfilling the job description according to what they all discussed together, then the director can get fired by the board of directors. So also what I was commonly told was the problem that we have here in Northwest America is when we're practicing polygamy, men are bringing 50% to the table, and then the women is expected to bring the other 50%. But what that does is now we have equal shares. So if we're business partners and we have equal shares, nobody's in charge. But one party wants to be in charge, whether that be the male or the female. You can't be a 50% partner and expect 80 or 100% dictatorship. So with that, I'll open the discussion. Does anybody have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say two things. I think we as a people have this. I remember I talked to some of my boys. We were at a bar. This is when I was a drink. We were talking about love, and one of the arguments was like love doesn't exist. Love isn't real.
Mm-hmm.
But what they failed to express was they were basing that statement off of what the movies tell us about love and relationships. That form of romanticized, happy all the time, everything's great. There's sunflowers growing out the bathroom toilet, and money's falling from trees, and everything's so passionate, romantic. That form of love is fake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I was like, we talk about love isn't real. Love is sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Love is listening to someone complain about something you perceive is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
but you're listening anyway because it's important to that person.
Mm-hmm.
Love is seeing a person's cycle of either self-sabotage or their emotional distraughtness where they can't manage their own emotions, and still accepting that person in their entirety and not discarding that person because they're not as emotionally mature or logical as you.
Mm-hmm.
Love is unconditional. Period. Doesn't matter what care you got, whatever. Unconditional. Period. Right? So we as a people need to understand that that's what love is. Unconditional acceptance, not a romanticized version that we're seeing because of your point.
I wanted to add to that.
Because a relationship is a business.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah.
A lot of our women, this is from my own personal experience, me personally, they don't want to accept that a relationship is business, period.
Yep.
They want the romanticized version of that.
Mm-hmm.
So when, as a person who has approached women with polygamy, it's never seen in that light because of our own perspectives of what love is and what a relationship is. So everything you were saying, I agree 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, as an example, if a man's going to provide 100%, are you talking about a house?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about an apartment?
And that's why
exactly
it's on a company. You would write this all up. This is a part of the contract. You plan it out. Not for good things only, for bad things too.
Agreed. 100%. We had this conversation multiple times. But how many times have we talked about with other people, if you're going to get into a relationship, like let's say he's coming to us for counsel, which is what we do, right?
Yeah.
You say, you know what, you should get into a written contract with your partner. And then our people see that as like, what do you mean? Like, they get offended when we present.
That's why I'm like, it's funny that you say that women get offended because also equally men get emotional and offended.
Agreed.
From my experience and my approach, when I try to approach it more like, let's make a sound contract. Let's make agreements. Let's write it down. Let's hold each other accountable.
Yes.
I get the weaseling.
Yep.
Like
now, this is where you, like her and I personally, have had many conversations about, from the male perspective, me sharing her, from the female perspective, her sharing me.
Because we need to learn.
We both said, I said women are like I said women are going through that, and then she respectively in her position was like, I didn't know men were going through that either. So there's a lot of things that men are going through and women are going through. And since we don't effectively communicate that with each other, we just keep damaging each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a cycle of injured people injuring more people and then blaming it on the injury why they injured people.
Right.
Yeah, for the people at home and also for the people in this room, we're not having this discussion with a goal to bash each other. It's just something that we need to start talking about in the community so that we can, if we're going to use it, we need to actually perfect it and refine it and get some perspective and get an idea of what we're supposed to be doing. Because right now there's no communication and we're just it's not being able. Yes, it's debates about who's to blame and who does what wrong, and I'll never come to an understanding if I can't listen.
Can I speak a little bit about the situation? I have a question for you. So I have a perspective like a female, like saying about contracts and stuff like that. So now it is turned into a business, right? So how about in a decision that if you love a person, like he was saying about like unconditional, right? If that person cannot have a child, now I turn it into a business. I have to be able to have a contract, or what? It comes from there. So from a business perspective, all the way to having unconditional love, no matter what. If you like want to be with that person, why you care so much about having a child, no matter what.
I think initially, go ahead.
So let's say you do have your wife and she is barren, she can't have children. if you have a business, like you know, say you have an estate, you would like to continue that estate. So now you have to have heirs. If she can't give you an heir, then maybe you can talk to her about, since you can't produce an heir, can we bring in, you know, a woman who may be in a poor situation? Let's bring her into the family, educate her on what we need to educate her on, and then create an heir that way. Can
I give some more structure to that? So, from the explaining and the conversations that I've had, the women have security. Because the problem with bringing in another woman and bringing in another heir is that as an investment, it might damage the first woman's security, because it might leave her in a position where she's not getting the return she's investing. So that's why there's contracts, and that's why the women have 100% of whatever they put into the relationship. If they want to go to work, 100% of that money is theirs. If they want to open up another business and maybe pull in from the family, and the family will get a portion of that, but because that's her personal investment, and if she invested most of the investment was made by her, she gets most of the return. So it continues to provide her security, as opposed to if she wasn't making an investment for her security, while you know the male would be taking care of, you know, things, necessities, she would lose security. If it was just to bring in another girl to have an heir, she would almost be backseated to another female and an heir.
I think that's only viewing it from a negative context.
Well, not a I'm pointing out this is the worry, and this is where the worry is in the lack of security. And no, I'm getting sound bars.
So
I posted another one. The first one I did.
The same thing. The same question is gonna go back to you. So now that we're living in a different type of generation, and people having like contracts at the same time, caring about somebody, like in the same gender from each other, like females to females, males to males, they have a love or whatever it is, but they have a contract because they put in 50-50 shares in their company.
Well,
this is what
every relationship, all law is contract, period. You can't get in, unless you're forcing someone, but then obviously I'm not. Yeah. But I can't get into a relationship with her if she doesn't agree. You know what I'm saying? So literally everything is up to what the people involved agree to. Period. Either it is. If I want polygamy, she doesn't, but I want to be with her, I'm going to do it. All right, I'm polygamy. But if she wants polygamy or polyandry, and she wants to be with me, and I say no, then she has a choice of either giving that up or being with me. But essentially, it's her decision, and she can't be treated unequally just because that's what she wants or that's her decision.
How can we separate from contract and having mutual love for somebody? How can we separate that?
I think that's again falling back on the fantasy of love. You're not always 100% in love. Like if you've ever been in a long relationship, you're not always in love. Yeah, it's always one person more. In nature, nothing's exactly equal. That would be abnormal. So nothing can be at top condition and performing condition all the time. You can come back to love as long as you always have that respect for each other and that appreciation. It's not meant to be all roses and hearts and all the time. Yeah, and it's not even, it doesn't necessarily need to be a hard time. You just don't always have to be like in that honeymoon stage. It'll come back around if you give it time. So that's why this is why our relationships are failing, because we're just basing it off of like we have to be in love all the time, and when we're not in love, we bail. We don't have to be in love all the time. It'll come back around.
The emotional side of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it? Oh, she wanted to say something.
No, just like I am very firm on whatever relationship. Whatever relationship you are forming, regardless, your relationship is based on agreements. Whatever you're agreeing to. All we're saying here, or all Janae is saying here, put that agreement on paper. and hold yourself accountable. Whatever relationship that you enter into, that's an agreement. And it can be renegotiated, and it can be an open period, but like all you're saying, we say contract and then it becomes a scary thing. It's not. We agreed to this. We agreed you'd be home by a certain time. We agreed that I would make you dinner. We agreed that you would pay the bills. We agreed that we go out on vacation once every 6 months. We agreed to these things. We talked about that. That's verbal. All we're saying here is, okay, now it's on paper. And now we can say, hey, listen, we agreed to this. There's no, oh yeah, no, but
it takes the emotional, I feel like you always out of the picture.
We said this in the beginning. We talked about this. There's no, oh, but I feel like, oh, but this is what we talked about. This is the people, these are the individuals we said we were going to be for each other. So that's it.
And also, you know, when you're treating polygamy as a structure for a company, remember your investment. If you want to be 50-50, that means she has 50 say. If you're investing more, then you own more shares and you have more say.
That doesn't necessarily mean he or she has half say, because what if you just agree that that's not what it is?
Wait, hold on. Yeah, you can dictate that what is the shares that you get from the things that you bring to the table.
I'm just throwing that out so people understand they have full control of what they want to agree to, not just Riseofthemoors said.
Well, no, this is a contract. It's unique to each situation. And also, another thing that I was presented with was, because you're the director still has to answer to the board of directors, which is the wives. So it's not entirely like, well, I own all the shares and I say what's go. You have to, if you have a big company, or if you're really trying to move towards something large, you have a board of directors to keep you from making foolish decisions as a single person. So to ensure the vitality of the company, you have to consult your board of directors. If they find that you're just disregarding and making foolish decisions, you can get fired as a director, as a husband.
That goes for any of the board of directors too, as well.
And that in a company, in a company structure, a lot of people think that directors of companies or CEOs own the company and they run things. They answer to a board of directors because those people are the shareholders. They invest into this. So just like all your wives would invest into the household, or that, you know, they're not going to want a poor return. So, and it's up to you to, you know, talk to your board of directors, your wives, to make a good decision, because otherwise you're at risk of getting fired.
That's pretty much connected to everything. We're in a daily basic contract.
You know what I'm saying? But the problem is
between verbal and written.
Yeah, here we just doing it more emotional, and you present this and everybody's like, oh, no. Or we, you know, from our eyes, I realized researching it online and then actually talking to nationals that come from countries that practice this, what I'm reading online is not at all what they're telling me what's going on, or not at all what they're practicing. So we're almost being set up to fail.
Yeah. They want, because we're in an age of information where they know people will go to something else before even trying themselves. Like, people, if they're searching for something, they'll ask somebody for the remote control. Like, look for it. It's in this.
Well, the thing is too.
Why would I go for somebody to get their experience when I can experience it?
The thing is too. Initially, us trying, we have the wrong setup to begin with.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know how to practice at all. It's like, you can try and play basketball, but if you don't know the rules and how the structure of the game, then you're not going to be playing basketball.
You know the basics.
Yeah.
Just thinking of street ball, team basketball. Yeah, I think it's the concept that we have to also take into consideration. Like, when I hear polygamy, sometimes I would think, yeah, that might not be good for the female. I know I'll be good regardless, because, like, I'm a guy. I'm going to find a woman.
Well,
you know? That's how I think.
But from the way it's been explained to me and the research that I've been doing, the guy is almost at a larger risk, because now when he's thinking about, oh, I want another girl, he's also thinking about, I got to pay for another household.
Right.
And we're making agreements here. You know, you can't present to me an apartment. I want a house for my children. So are we going to have multiple houses? Are we going to have one house together? How big is this house going to be? Because I need space. Because the intent is not to be cramped together so we can irritate each other. So all these things go into a contract. So that's why you'll find a lot of Egyptian men a lot of African men, they one wife. That's all I can take care of because I can't afford to pay all these bills. And if the woman's helping, then she has more shares. Now she has more say. So you can't walk around like you're in charge of everything because we're equal partners now.
So let me ask you this, right? So in the other part of the world, they have already married their children before they were even born.
Because now the family's getting involved to make a bigger investment for the family.
Correct.
We're not going to make investments into families that aren't functioning. That's a poor investment. So that's why the family, we need to meet people.
That were wealthy
and
overseas, that's what they do.
Or even well-off families. That's why they try to arrange marriages to ensure that the children, are going to be okay.
I met this dude that he said that he had 27 wives. And the reason why it was because he was wealthy back where he was from.
Yep.
And I think those families of the 27 wives that they had, all these families, they knew they were making a good investment to be able to put her on his roof management, correct?
And they're still the board. And a lot of women, like, they don't realize that you are part of the board of directors. You set the job description in the rules of the company. So you don't have to worry about the day-to-day management. If the man says, we're going to take the car here and that's that, we're going to this mechanic, that's fine. Because that's not your job to worry about that. Your job is to say you have to have the car fixed. It doesn't matter how he does it because he's the director.
I like the way we're talking about making these agreements because a lot of individuals will say, well, that's not fair. Like, that's a burden on him to take care of all of the bills. But listen, in an ideal world, the one in which we are working towards, she is responsible for raising a nation.
Yep.
Every heir that she produces for you, she will be raising and educating herself. Like that is
that's a big job too.
That's a big job. That's every day, like making sure that we're taken care of and fed, and making sure that these
morals
and morals are molded the way that they need to be molded. And it's really important because board of directors, and I want to just stress, like, yes, he can be fired, but I want, like, it's an agreement, and we all agree to our part, and we all agree to what we're going to bring to the table. And any one of these directors, I feel like, can be fired too.
Well, a director absolutely can be. Can absolutely be fired. The only reason I'm reminding is because, one, women think men have it easy. If you're practicing the right way, that's a big weight.
It's a lot.
You have, as a board of director, you have a lot less chances to mess up and get fired. So it's a big weight on the man to have to provide for all of this and do day-to-day work and footwork. That's a big task because as being one of the wives, you're going to have help. So I don't want to take away from the weight, and I don't want to, because a lot of times we're positioned where women think that they don't have power. That's the only reason why I keep mentioning that. I'm sorry, Jamalka.
Oh, you hit my point on the head where she was mentioning the duty of the woman to do all these things for the child, make sure their mind is correct, because the condition of the child reflects the condition of the mother. I was gonna bring up how in a polygamous relationship, it's not just her. If the other wives aren't pregnant yet, then they're assisting him. And like the brother mentioned earlier, when he said there was another woman who wanted multiple men, he was saying how she might lay with a man who isn't as emotional as she needs right now. So that's what the other man's for. It's the same thing if there's multiple wives. If the mother's a good cook and the other wife isn't, then the other wife is good at something else, then she can instill that into the child.
I just like to add, as a group, we're just talking about the most common setup. It doesn't mean that women can't have multiple husbands or whatever mix you want to do for your company. That's your decision.
I was just clarifying that it's more than just having wives. It's the load, because the wives can also help pay rent. If that's what they choose to do. If they see their CEO or struggling, all right, well, the board is going to invest this much money so the CEO can do this.
Because you have to protect your investment. That's why a lot of African men, they can do a double, come home, have a plate of food, clean house, quiet. Because the women are securing their investment He has to be able to go out and perform again. So I'm going to make sure that my equipment is in the best condition to continue to produce for me.
So,
But that,
so what are the ramifications? Because what we're dealing with nowadays are women who have kids with already the CEOs, and you want to discontinue, but it's not the greatest investment for the kid.
Exactly. Oh, so I just go to the Quran because that's exactly what it talks about in the Quran.
Read it.
So this is chapter 4. Let me just read the opening because most of these Semitic haters, or there's a war in Islam, they say the Quran always teaches about disrespecting the women. This is the Holy Quran translated and commentary by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. This is what it says in the beginning of chapter 4. It says, the decencies of family life should be enforced. Women should be held in honor and their rights recognized in marriage, property, and inheritance. This book also talks about how you can't use this Quran to force your wife into sexual activity. You can't use this to promote your negative agenda. It says it's right in this book, right? So it talks about polygamy, and it talks about the strict standard in which polygamy is supposed to be used, not just to have another wife. So chapter 4, verse 1. Actually, let me just skip that. Verse 2, it says, to orphans restore their property. So, a woman who, her baby daddy ain't shit, basically. Yes. Right? To orphans restore their property when they reach their age, nor substitute your wealth, your worthless things, with theirs. They're good ones, and devour not their substance by mixing it up. So don't take their stuff. This is telling. So now it's talking about inheritance. Right? Then it says, so don't mix it up with your own, for this is indeed a great sin. If ye fear that ye shall not be able to deal justly with the orphans, meaning you have too many children, or we're trying to get our so-called black babies out of these orphanages because these Europeans are adopting our children like crazy, right? Marry women of your choice, 2 or 3 or 4. But if ye fear ye shall not be able to deal justly with them, then only one that your right hand possesses, that will be more suitable to prevent you from doing injustice. Meaning, if you have a bunch of children you have to take care of, and you only have one wife and it's too much burden on her, then get someone else. Get a barren woman, get a widowed woman, someone who needs a family unit. Or it talks about a captive. Now, don't get that word construed in your head, because you can be taking care of a poor person who you're taking care of her, so that's technically your captive. You can marry her. She can be one of the wives. But it says specifically, if you can't deal justly with more women, with more than one woman, then you shouldn't be with them.
And just a little disclaimer, along with that, in other nations, if it doesn't work out with a wife, I think it says this in the Quran too, you still have an obligation to the children to go protect the home, to make sure that woman's home is in good condition, to make sure her mental state and her economic state is still in good condition. So it's not like, it doesn't end. So be wise about how many liabilities you're going to be taking on, or how many responsibilities you're going to take on, because it doesn't end. And it also says in the Quran, you still have that responsibility if you break up, and you are not to damage it by pursuing a sexual relationship again. Because that, again,
hold on. I'm fine. Keep going. I'm fine.
Yeah. So it's, it's big weights and responsibilities.
It also says don't act niggardly in the Quran. Chapter 4, verse 37. Nor those who are niggardly or enjoying niggardliness on others. Nigger is a status. But I'll try to find that verse where it talks about, if you separate from a woman, keep her as a friend. Don't just drop.
Yeah. And it specifically says not for that type of romantic relationship anymore. You guys are a working unit from your past relationship, because of your children together, because of your investments together. It's not at all to be damaged. So it's a big responsibility.
I believe the women's letter was on the men for that man. And a certain paragraph they tell you it's just business. It's nothing else. We have to survive, and we cannot sleep if that man is in the backyard knowing he's a slave. So we got to break him because it's a long-term business transaction. And again, in the Constitution of 1801 from 272, there's a chapter where chapter 5 is moors, chapter 4, where there's a chapter that deals with marriage, you cannot divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you call a divorce is divorcing the heir.
Mm-hmm. And that's
There's
exactly
no divorce.
that correlates with the Quran.
Divorce from utility. And I got laws and so that's that I found that yes, it is a business. It is.
If you guys read the which Jamal's read it a million times, the divine warning by the prophet to the nations, and he says they will not refrain from their sinful ways and actions and their deeds. And then it talks about him going to the south, and saying this is we fought for these freedoms, and then we still abuse. It says on my people consciously practicing the things that which bring dishonor, disgrace, disrespect to any nation. And that's what we continue to do to ourselves because we don't let go of our sinful ways. Is if we're going to practice polygamy for greedy ambitions and not take on the responsibility, which is our sinful ways, is not being accountable and being responsible too, it's not going to work for us.
I think that's a major problem is that a lot of our men are looking at it as, just lower self needs, or not, lower self wants, because they're not needs. And sometimes, men are, how Lauren Hill says, how are you going to win if you make right within? Sometimes we're not 100% for ourselves before we even get into a relationship with another person. Mm-hmm. Never mind trying to add somebody, a third one into. Yeah. You're not solid alone. Your relationship is not solid, but then you want to. So it's like. And you're going to take on another liability. 3 toxic people who are creating this toxic environment, and it's never going to work out that way. Mm-hmm. It has to be something well negotiated. It has to be. There has to be rules. There has to be boundaries. There has to be. Well, speaking to the contract of it, right. If your goals in your contract are not being met, you can't take on another investment. Right. And you just can't. It will be it will be the failure of the company and then to spread your resources. Sorry. Not all men want to have children either. So it's okay, mm-hmm. You want this polygamy for what then? Mm-hmm. Yep. Because if you're not trying to have heirs with either one of these women, so it's just about sex for you then. Yeah, but that's a specific situation because I think a man can have a wife, and be okay, she's a wife, and then have another wife who may be more mentally competent. Mm-hmm. And if the condition of and this is just to throw out a counter to your point, mm-hmm. just so people can start thinking. If one wife is more intelligent and the condition of the child reflects the condition of the mother, one wife may not be as competent as another. So but she's a bomb cooker and cleaner and supporter and back rubber, and she's making sure that the man is in good condition to make more money for the family and continue to work that he needs to do to support the family. That's also an investment.
Exactly. You should deduce it by the desire and the primal state of the person intellectually. Because in a sense, I heard this from social media, it's 80% primal and 20% mental. When that gets into a foreplay, men have this desire and this primal thing where it's when they're with their mates, they want to dominate. Mm-hmm. Hence why the control. Hence why the hierarchy of I instill what I instill myself, and going up to the high ranks, being from the bottom, mm-hmm. to realize that I need to grow. I need to. I think I'm going to pass it to you, but that's how I feel that people need to analyze it from that perspective and continue to build from there. Mm-hmm. I agree. I just want to add in, different people bring out different energies of different people. Like I'm an Aries, so zodiacally I'm missing Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer because I was conceived in Leo, so I'm missing those 3 signs. Yes. So those 3 people may be able to bring out a different side of me that I've never seen before compared to a Libra,
because she's my exact opposite. And when I was in my mother's womb, I was being formulated during the season of Libra, but not Taurus, Gemini, and Scorpio. So if we're choosing mates according to what you're saying, different people bring out different things in different people. So not every husband or wife is going to be the same because there is just different energy, period.
May I? Sure. I am listening, and I realize that we're talking about an important thing. Marriage, agreement, polygamy, yes or no. But the two basic foundation elements are the woman and the man. So I gotta ask the question, what is a man?
A thinker.
When is a man? Right. What is a woman? When is a woman? So automatically I go back to the ancestors. I realize that it's not like nowadays. And some group or some nation concerned the same system. A man is like the name Ali. It's something unique. It's something you accomplish. The Greek call them the 12 step or the 12 work. Some tribe in Africa, you have to be a man at 41. So what is a man? First off, we all know that we are stars, which means 5-foot and sorry, I got it. Sorry, and we are physical, we are mental, we are emotional, we have psychic energy. So, to be a man, originally, we need to fulfill or accomplish every step just like the sun in the sky. So I have to fully live my childhood. This is why I take love. Because I will need that childhood because late in life, certain things gonna happen if I didn't get love at that point. I'm not gonna have certain love energy to choose between good and bad, between pull the trigger or put the gun down. Because the childhood is the energy that will make me further on. This is 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. And from the old ancestors, everything is an initiation. For example, if I get to a state like a woman or a man, I get to the point like I can ejaculate, I don't know how to say it in English, or I get, the genital organ getting to maturity, and then because this is not a man. It means I'm sexually ready to reproduce. But what the ancestors does, they call it initiation. It's a natural initiation. Now, I got to initiate you to it. You need love.
That's
now you
don't
have
just abandon her.
energy. So you have to fulfill that age.
Right.
So a man is not a boy. Although they look alike, they're drinking the same bottle, but at first when we drink,
Can I add?
of course.
You're innately talking about the difference between a minor and an adult.
The mind is
The mind of the person. Because if you look up the definition of a girl isn't a young woman. A girl means a captive. You know what I mean? So is she in the state of minority or the state of majority? Innately, when you ask what is a man and what is a woman, and not only is it the mental capacity, the minority and the majority, but again, it's that person's zodiac. As an Aries, I can't be like if I'm an Aries and you're a Taurus, you're more compatible with a Scorpio. You can't then try to. I'm not saying you do this. I'm just saying in general this applies to anyone. You can't then demand the energy that a Scorpio would naturally give you if I'm an Aries. You know what I mean? So I'm a man, but I'm an Aries man, not a Scorpion man, not a Libra man, not a Capricorn man. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's I personally think. Yeah, I do have Scorpio, but that's when the zodiac, the intricacies of the zodiac and the juxtapositions of the planets and all that kind of stuff. That's when it comes into play, and that's when our ancestors did have rearranged marriages, because if we know the science of the womb and we know that you're going to have an Aries and you're going to have a Libra, and a Libra male and an Aries female, we know the energies are compatible. If you got your house, your state in order, you have your state in order, we're trying to breed competent Aries to continue this Moorish movement going, then it'll make sense for you to say, okay, my Aries son or whatever I said, and my Libra daughter are going to link so that they can continue, the progressiveness of the nation. Because her and I, she's Libra, I'm Aries, we work well together. So if you're going to manage an estate from a business mindset, I would recommend having an Aries and a Libra on your team. Because Libras think like no other, and Aries accomplish anything that they put their minds to, especially with a Libra puppet master in them.
Yeah. And
Oh, sorry, go ahead, I'll finish. I apologize.
sorry. The minor and adult, like, competent, how they break it down back in the ancestors. It's just what the community needs.
Mhm.
Back then we used good, not money. So the job description was water, working on the field, provide, hunting. So kids stays at home because not ready, because the investment is supposed to be what? The survival. This is the only thing we educate ourselves from. This is what the father gives to the son. This is what mother gives to the daughter. Survival. And we know how to survive. And by surviving, the biggest book that we ever read in life is life itself. We learn from how we chase. We learn from fighting. We learn war. We learn the same thing, but we use different tools. So I like the fact that you bring that the zodiac sign into it, because it's allowing you to understand.
Mhm.
It's not marriage. It's not arranged marriage. It's higher than that.
Yeah.
It's to create an elevated society, more harmonious society.
Mm-hmm.
So by bringing that argument, question is, right? By bringing that argument, we need to,
Oh, no, finish, please.
learn from it and connect, and how we could, because now we're in a state of broken friend, broken families, broken. Some of us, I don't see family members broken family, because, like I said, I keep going back to the Williams letter. It was designed for us to not having affection or caring for them. That's all now we push. People that looks like us away, because it's written down in the Williams letter. So to change it, we have to really go into this and learn the science, and to come back to that state where a man, a competent person, there was initiation of a brotherhood, because a man is created by a brotherhood of men. A woman is created by a brother, by a sisterhood. And this is how we're able to generate good elements and keep reproducing the future, because the future is now. So,
In the hearing both of you speak, like, it's really important when you start a new relationship. I don't think even beyond this or before this polygamy conversation, any agreement that you are having with anyone that you are invited into your life, what are you creating? So when you're thinking about this as a business, as you should be, this is not romanticized love. This is not any of that. This is, we are building something to be continued, and how we're going to make this the best and strongest organization that we possibly can, which is what a family is, which is what a government is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you creating? And then how are we building it? Like, I feel like all the board of directors should have some type of skill. She's a seamstress, she cooks, she does this, she does that, he secures it, and they then give those skills to the heirs so that they can then survive in the world. So what type of organization are we building here? And what is that going to include? And then from that, okay, who are we bringing on our winning team? And that's how it should be done.
May I add to that? That's exactly what this represents. Tosh 3 pages did a lecture, Who's Your Mother? And he went over the zodiac and why and how and why the families are destroyed because we're not bringing in the unity of what we're supposed to be bringing in. Because if this represents the mother, this represents the father, and this represents the, them coming together to meet the child, and the father. Let's say his sun is in Libra. Let's say his moon is in Scorpio. I'm just making it up. Let's say his rising sign is Aries, right? It wouldn't make sense for an air sign.
Excuse me, can you explain this part? I didn't get it. Sun, Libra, rising.
Yeah, so this is the trinity operations of the zodiac. You have your sun sign, which is what you identify yourself as. You have the rising sign, which is what people perceive you as. And you have your moon sign, what you feel like emotionally, or what drives you emotionally.
Yeah. When you were born, all the planets were in a particular place, and I like to say they were having a conversation because they're all those energies are interacting. So the sun was in a particular place, and that makes you interact with a certain way. The moon was in a particular place. They're all in a particular place, and then together they create the energy that you are manifest as a being. That conversation, that moment in time, that's you manifest as a being. Does that make sense?
That was beautiful.
Because we all frequency.
Mm-hmm. Please continue.
Well, I'm just trying to make something up off the top of my head. Right. So let's say, as the father, he was born under the sign of Libra, right? And at the time, there's a Virgo rising and a Scorpio moon. Excuse me, Aries rising. So now we're dealing with air, water, and fire. But now, let's say the mother, her sun is Taurus, which is Earth. The moon is Capricorn, Earth. And the rising is Aquarius. Huh?
Oh no, my daughter is
So now we're dealing with the elemental energies of that human being, just period. And we're removing the free will aspect that's part of it. Because as an Aries, I'm quick to temper, but my temper is based on my free will. Am I gonna allow this to anger me or not? So we have to separate that just dealing with elementals. So we can see, and I'm not the best at the zodiac, but I know basics, right? The basic of what this is saying is that this sun sign and that sun sign, the air will essentially elementally dry out the earth, because according to the zodiac, earth and water are more compatible. So based on just this description, not looking at the person's zodiac wheel, that's already a conflict. In that those two people period is already a conflict. Then if we're looking at their moon sign, if this moon sign is water and this one's earth, we're looking at harmony emotionally to a certain degree, right? Then if you look at the rising is air sign, that rising is fire sign. Now we're dealing with another compatible. Aquarius is air.
Oh.
Aquarius is symbolized as the water bearer, so it's symbolized as water, but Aquarius is an air sign. So since this is an air sign and that's a fire sign, they're more compatible. So now there's only one conflict. And then based on the rest of the zodiac, we can see if that's going to be a major conflict, a minor conflict, and then just based on the maturity of the individuals, what type of child are they going to bring? A child that's harmonious, or a child that's like this? Or a child that's like this? When it should be looking like this. So by not knowing the zodiac, this is what we're bringing in. Children that don't know who and what they are, because we don't even know who and what we are. And we're deciding to mate with other people who we're not only not compatible with, but they also don't even know they are. So it's not the father or the mother's fault, because we get into arguments all the time. Well, it's the women's fault. Well, it's the man's fault. It's both of our faults for not knowing what we're doing. Because when you have sex with someone, the objective of sex is to reproduce. Period. That's what it's used for. You know what I'm saying? So even if you have a child or not, you're bringing something forward. What are you bringing forward? Hatred towards each other or love towards each other? Because if you're just using sex as an emotional form to express yourself, then you're technically adulterating, because the word adulterate means is Latin. Ad means to, and then alter. So you're using sex for something that it wasn't necessarily used for, but it's not a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? So there's more to this than just having sex with people and reproducing.
So how can you be able to set at that point?
By mating with someone who's more compatible with you, as opposed to someone who's just you're just sexually attracted to.
Yeah. But if the heir was born with that type of difficulty, what do you think it would be the best for us as a frequency to channel ourselves to make sure that he understands he's off-center, center himself?
So in this aspect, in dealing with these two people that I just made up, the only conflict that I can see is the sun and both sun signs. So then these two people would have to decide, okay, should we bring in another fire sign to complement this person, or another water sign to complement this person?
Or you can plan for both.
Exactly. Or you can plan for both. Exactly.
Now I see the equation on the polygamy or whatever.
Yeah.
I understand.
This applies to monogamy and polygamy or polyandry. It's the same science.
Or it applies to a family. Like I like to plan out things. I'm a strategic thinker. I can set up things, and I can do administration, well thought out plans. But my brother is just tell me where to go and I'll execute it. I'm cutting off heads. Tell me where to go. Point me in the direction. I need him. Like it was great that my mother had the both of us. We just need to both know our roles. So he can't be thinking that he's gonna tell me, "Oh, we're gonna do it like this," because you don't plan well. And I can't think I'm gonna go out there with the sword because I don't do that well.
Exactly.
So we need each other.
The compass is the square.
Exactly. The compass and the square. Anything else?
I'm proud of you guys.
Well, we've been talking for almost an hour, and I don't know why I can't see the live chat, but hopefully, well, I can't see it. There's a lot of them, but I can't see it. Oh yeah.
If your baby moms or whatever, the second wife, whatever, if it doesn't work out, it says don't just abandon it.
Ye are never able to be fair and just as between women, even if it is your ordinate desire, but turn not away from a woman altogether, so as to leave her, as it were, hanging in the air. If ye come to a friendly understanding and practice self-restraint, Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. So it sounds like even if you have to leave her, Allah is not going to condemn you as long as you
maintain her.
Don't just leave her in the dust and just fail all your obligations that you made to this woman. And vice versa. If you're a female with a bunch of males, you can't just drop them. You made an obligation.
Yes, it's an error, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's only fair to talk about is it polyandry when the woman has multiple husbands?
Yeah, and that's why I said in the beginning of the conversation, this is not to just target men and put women in this position. This is just the most common circumstances.
Historically known, though.
Yeah.
With the matriarchy and women rulers, women then had multiple husbands.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
Fire.
I have no fire. No, but I read somewhere that, like, again, historically, like, a woman, any man that a woman like interacts with regularly was called her husband. So she relies on someone to drive her places. If she relies on someone to help her take care of her children, if she relies on someone to do her business work, if she had someone running her estate, like those were her husbands, like in that, just like, this is a man that takes care of me for whatever function that I need him to perform. Husband. Like I've read that historically that was a thing as well.
Yes.
Like
now, just to add on to what you're saying, that's called a common law marriage.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the law books. You want to read it?
I believe in the state of Rhode Island, common law marriage is after 7 years.
Well, hold on. But we're not citizens of the state of Rhode Island because we're not Europeans. So it is what we say it is.
As a common law marriage is as long as two people call each other husband, wives, and the family and friends around you recognize that. That's what it is.
For how long?
In the state of Rhode Island, it's 7 years.
Oh, okay.
But if two people, if you call me your wife and I'm calling you my husband, and our family and friends do the same, then technically, right. Right.
But the ancestors made it that way. You know what I'm saying? He's talking about owning a corporation lines.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They have to give you the same privilege because it is our religion. That's what I would believe.
Mm-hmm. So she's gonna read common law marriage. Common law marriage and common law from Black's Dictionary, 5th edition.
All right, so common law marriage, one not solemnized in the ordinary way, i.e. non-ceremonial, but created by an agreement to marry, followed by cohabitation. A consummated agreement to marry between persons legally capable of making a marriage contract, per verbatim, followed by such marriage requires a positive mutual agreement, permanent and exclusive of all others, to enter into a marriage relationship, cohabitation sufficient to warrant a fulfillment of necessary relationship of a man and wife, and an assumption of marital duties and obligations. Then it names some case law. And then we have common law wife, a woman who was party to a common law marriage, one B, having lived with a man in a relation of concubinage during his life, asserts a claim after his death to have been his wife according to the requirements of the common law. So there you go. If we agree that we married, we married.
Exactly. You don't need a ceremony, but Prophet Nuhu Ali said if you want to get married, then the grand sheik can perform a ceremony. But you know, Allah is the only one that unites parts. That's nature. It has nothing to do with no man talking about the power of this. No,
right.
It's yes or no.
Right.
And you do it in front of the people, and that's it.
Can you dress up all white?
Yeah, you dress up all red, all black.
This is so nice that we're able to have this conversation without barking over each other.
Well, there's no need for that. As long as everybody's being heard and we're all discussing everything in an intelligent tone.
Another thing that I wrote about in the start of this whole thing is at the end I came to the conclusion, because I asked myself the question, is this a tool that we can actually use? And like for myself right now, no, I don't think I'm ready for that. And a lot of, men that I speak to about it, they're like, well, that, they're pounding the idea that why? It's a tool, use it. And it's like, it's okay for me to say, right, I can't use this tool. If I'm dragged into this, I'm going to damage the company.
The whole thing is gonna
and it's a, we need to not pressure each other to conform to this, because it will get there eventually if we're trying to balance ourselves. Right. Like the same example on the board. If we continue to work on ourselves, we can get there eventually. So you can't fault somebody also for not them just flat out saying this is not for me.
Right.
Agreed. But like someone said earlier, how do you know if you haven't even tried it?
That's why I said you can't make that statement saying that something isn't for you.
Well,
you don't even know yourself, and when people can do so many things.
Well, for example, I'm not coming off of anything. Like if I know I'm a jealous person, if I know if I see you standing next to another female, I can't breathe. It's probably not a good idea until I work on that to get into this. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's a bad or a good thing, and I'm not saying it can't or can be used as a tool for us. I'm saying we need to each as a person evaluate and be honest with ourselves. Why do we want to do this, and can we handle this?
Yes.
But if a person understands that about or comprehends that about themselves, that is them doing the work.
Right? Yeah.
Like to get to a certain point. Like once they say, listen, I can't right now. I don't want to. It's not I don't want to. It's just like, listen, I know this about myself. Like let me grow. Allow them to do that. And then again, I believe in open periods. Like we have an agreement. When we reach our open period, we can open up for renegotiation. If we're both ready for that, we can continue as we've been, or we can continue with this new contract instead. But like, wait till the open period, guys. Wait till the open period.
But just to see, slowly someone would notice.
I put a bodyguard up there.
She placed the mufti right there. See.
Let's see it.
It's a little Dragon Ball Z character. I was like, nobody will ever know.
Yeah. Super Saiyan God of Jesus. Dan was about to say. The whole jealousy part. That's lower self.
Mm-hmm.
So, just posing a question: is the lower self jealousy, greed, whatever, lust? Is that a valid reason to say no?
Yes.
If it's gonna damage,
If it affects you,
if you know you haven't dealt with it.
All right, hold on.
Mhm.
You have to ascend.
Yes, that's my point. My point. So to clarify, thank you for helping me. Is stating lower self reasons and then staying there a valid reason to say no? Because you said ascend, and you say with the I don't know if the words in your mouth, but this is what I'm hearing. With the goal of getting out of the jealousy, not necessarily accepting polygamy, but just getting out of that. Is that a solid stance or position to reject polygamy?
No, and that's why I said I don't reject polygamy.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, if that person is not moving on and not growing and choosing not to change that, you cannot force them, and you cannot push them into the situation.
So, going with the wordplay now, jealousy for desire.
Yeah.
So how does that rein in when people actually that
I think it's like, let's say if your wife presents a male to you and you're able to discern your emotions from logic, you're gonna say, okay, if you're gonna present this male to me, what is his qualification? What is he good at? Is he smart or is he just handsome?
Yes.
Like, what is your honest reason for doing it? And then let them confess from their mouth what they're in it for. Then you can discern, is it their lust or is it a sound decision that they're making?
Ellie, please.
Yeah, and having a partnership or polygamy doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be sexually intimate.
Exactly.
So that you could have an older brother with an older wife, and the brother passed away, and he left all his inheritance to her, but she needs protection. You can bring her in, marry her, but not ever be intimate, but keeping the wealth within the family and have your own.
And that doesn't mean she can't, cook for him, make sure his laundry's done.
In my household, my mother and father, my mother has let so many family members in the house, so many year-old friends. I see that as polygamous. My dad wasn't having any sexual relations with them, but in my mind growing up, I see that as, this is how it would work. My dad's taking care of all the bills, my mom's taking care of the house, this other woman, family member, male, whatever, comes in and helps. That's my personal perspective on how polygamy works without any sexual, anything. She, whether it was a cousin, my mom's friends, my dad's friends, they would sit, eat dinner with us, they were treated as family, and that's polygamy.
I don't think there's anything wrong with not wanting polygamy either. Like you can still evolve and come out of your lower self, come out of blah blah blah, balance yourself, and still not want to be a part of that, because that's still extra people that you have to emotionally bring on to yourself, into yourself, into your relationship, and into your day-to-day life. And you can still say no, and that should be okay too. Like, I get that a lot of our ancestors participated in polygamy, but not all of them.
That's a valid excuse anyway.
I don't think so either, but a lot of people love to throw that one out there, and I'm sure they're in the chat at some point. Our ancestors were polygamous.
Not all of them practice.
I seen more, but she said, well, our ancestors also put those big ass plates in their lips. She ain't walking around like that. You know what I mean? They do that too, what's up?
They said that they were polygamous because the women weren't even being given the attention that they were supposed to be given attention, because the men were touching each other. So if you have women that are just sitting there and they're not being used for what they are actually, I'm not saying just to use them, being like bread.
No, but the prophet did say earlier, we were talking about this. Go ahead.
When you are able
direct
to
that sexual energy, and when you're able to marry, direct it right there. So marry when you can and direct all that energy.
What I'm saying is, like, the reason why for that polygamous is because those women that sexual energy was there, and their males were not paying attention to them. So what are you going to do with a bunch of women who's just going to let them die? This is why these harems were built for them. That's why the jealousy and the sin continue on.
But just in general, polygamy was used for different things. After a destruction of a people, they would breed the most competent men with the most competent women, both polyandry and polygamy. It didn't matter. It's about the nation.
Mhm.
After a long war, after our situation we're going through right now, genocide, you know what I mean, stuff like that. And there were other stories about the harems where it wasn't just women being abused. It was them escaping either a brutal marriage or whatever, or a bunch of men not interested in them, to go into this venue where they're treated properly. So even our concept on those things, I think, need to be corrected in general.
Mhm.
Do we think it's fair for nowadays, like we were talking about arranged marriages earlier? What if those two children, what if they are zodiacally, what if they are astrologically, I can't compatible, thank you.
Yeah.
What if they are compatible, but they're just, they did not.
Well, all contracts are under consent.
Wow.
They have to consent, or it's not a true contract. They
Well,
have to
arranged
consent.
marriages are contracts between parents, and so when children
No,
are
well,
born,
minors can't enter into contracts.
Exactly.
do they know? Because they're
But
born
minors
children.
I'm pretty sure
The parents can do all the planning that they want. Minors cannot enter into contracts, and it's not a contract unless there's consent.
Exactly.
Okay, so I had a friend growing up in high school. She was Chinese, and she was being held to an arranged marriage, and she would cry to me.
Well,
every
if
day
you-
because she did not.
If
want
you
to be
look
married.
at the history of these nations that use polygamy, where it started to go south is upon European conquest
Also,
or
additionally,
interference.
at the state doctrine, we as Moors can't judge what other nations and their cultures do.
Mhm.
So we as Moors can't speak for Japanese or Chinese.
Right? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, take into consideration, like, with arranged marriages, two people might not want to do that.
Yeah.
And then, like, families, like, in this situation in particular, this family was willing to, like, shun her if she wasn't going to.
I know a lot of
accept
families like that
because
too.
Just like the royal families, like Rothschilds and whatever the other big one is, they don't marry each other. Or they're like fourth cousins and they marry each other to keep that wealth in the families.
Yeah.
Right. So, and they have arranged
And
marriages.
it's great us having these discussions because we can make choices that are better for us.
Our nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not to say that our way is better than theirs, or there's any better way, but better for us.
Yeah.
Just may I speak?
Let me finish over this. I went to a seminar and I did it because it was my child. It was my first child, my first kid that I had, and they were teaching me how to be able to have comprehending the definition of a contract, and it could be able to affect the contract between me and agreement with the person. It could be able to affect the child. So what they said, to be able to have understanding, like you guys are talking about, and I was listening to, and just I want to put it out there. They were telling me that not to confuse a contract they previously established before they have the heir in place. Now they're together, so they definitely have a contract for life. So they knew not to be able to teach the child to be able to keep a contract. So they had a home for the child. So they knew when to come in, like weekends, every 3 days, I come in as a father to take care of the child and go to sleep. And then the other person leaves and then goes to their own normal home, but they had a home exactly for the child. That's pretty much of a contract what they're establishing right now into our society too. You know? So it's like having a home to not confuse the heir.
Yeah.
That is a misunderstanding of a contract of communication, anything, to make them focus on the main part, to center the self.
So now what that sounds like to me is child support without having the Europeans involved to say, well, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. That's exactly what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And the prophet said the Grand Chief is in charge of creating and enforcing law, meaning if we agree to some type of laws of how we want polygamy to exist within our society, we vote, the Grand Chief signs it into law, and that's how our nation will be governed as it relates to that. But that's something that we can do as a nation of people without these Europeans being involved. And if they try to put any of our Moorish men or women on child support, then it's up to the people, to help the Grand Chief to enforce that law, saying Europeans, you can't force our people to do this. These are our laws. You're in our land, so what are you talking about? That's the power that we have as Moors within the Moorish Zion Temple of America. Not saying that we're a charter temple, but we have the right to enact our own laws amongst ourselves. And then if you don't believe me, read the Sacred Quran.
Okay. So your question, because I think that arranged marriage would really work.
Yeah.
Like really,
And
really
the children
well.
have to be, if they're consenting, great, but make sure that they're consenting.
Make sure that they're consenting, but like astrologically compatible, right? What do they consent to? If they're raised to understand that like this is a business, this is a state, this is what family is. Like you're going to, we all have responsibilities in life, right?
And that's another responsibility on yourself. You're like, I'm not only readying myself for me, but I'm readying myself for this person that I grew up with and I know them. And
that's so important because when you have a community, your community, I mean, the children in the community, you marry who you know. You marry the people who understand your child, the same like cultural things that you had when you were young. So like, if astrologically they are compatible and this family respects this family and we put them together, like, why wouldn't it work? Because we understand that marriage is a business. Having heirs and raising a family is a business, right? We're doing this for the betterment of the estate, my personal estate, our national estate. We're doing this for the entire, for our people. So like, why not?
Watching from that perspective does make sense because protagonists, we talk about TV shows and cartoons. I give the example of Shaman King. There's a kid who wants to be the Shaman King, and he has a girlfriend who says she's going to be his wife and help him become the Shaman King. So in that aspect, you have an heir. You may have a son or a daughter. One of them is going to be a queen. They're going to help each other when they're at their lowest as kids to become stronger and competent after they become adults. So that is something that I can fully agree with that.
I agree with you guys. Maybe that's why I'm called the way I'm called. I agree with you. Just want to add up something like slavery or slave is an education. In the free mindset, I would believe it's another form of education. So we educate our kids to be who we want them to respect the laws that we give them as education. But now, based on that's why my name is Teruga Amael. There's a reason when I understand what the title is means, there's a reason who I am. From this, I realized that there's a bigger picture behind me. And all I'm listening is just you guys' opinion. But not the nation is. And then I started to ask myself a question. I enjoy electricity. Where is that from? I enjoy the concrete. Someone has discovered the mixture. There is bricks around here. Who made them? There is a wall. There's a wood floor. There is a door. There's a book. All I'm seeing around me. All I'm seeing around me is intelligence, knowledge. Where that come from? There's a different aspect in life. I don't know if I believe anybody around here for one time wrote poetry, made movie, or did something out of it ordinary. You do sometimes watch yourself, and after a few years you look at your work and you say, how I was able to tune into that? Mathematics, philosophy. And then I started to realize we came here to balance ourselves, to be better satellite, a better reset to channel. Like, for example, for Haiti, people started having things and they believe that it's magic. It's not. We call it Loa, voodoo. When I look at it, what it is, melanin allowed us when we are in love state. When we tune in the equilibrium of love, having the chakras aligned, we are able to chant, to be higher, to resonate, and to be in touch about things. We're not only the result of, you said it. If you said that I resonate with the stars, trust me, I know. And most of you feel it right now. So I know what frequency is. I am beautiful and I live it all day. Now, we are good, we are better because we are good at what we are doing. And we better together. Now, we're here to just create an harmonious mixture and to tap on the highest side. Why Language is so difficult for someone, and easier for them. Because that person, me, I'm a Gemini. Stream of communication is what I am. So I realized that chemistry, for me, I won't sit around with a man or a woman try to connect this and that to with a water and to create something. I'm not patient for that. But at the end of the day, after many years of learning that same element, this is how come out of it, manipulation of matter. If we believe that we are higher being, then we call ourselves God. So the end result of the process of getting ourselves back or raising ourselves or creating a new society is for the nation. So if we came here, we go back. So we need to create a new society where we could get them king. For me, myself, my community called me crazy. And trust me, when everybody called you crazy, you started to believe yourself. Trust me, I'm a psychopath. You know, you started to believe it for yourself, but when I started to learn it, and I realized that I was right, I didn't have to prove it. And then I realized that we were here for something bigger than that, way bigger than that. Just step into time, in the process of family, in the process to rearrange ourselves, to balance ourselves for something more great. And when I look at it, despite all the things that we have, we need to get to that love understanding because European, the others, but it just needs some love. I mean, the experience, it depends. If I bump into you on a good day, I might do something bad. Or say something and give a good word. If I bump you on a bad day, I might come with a smile. And you don't worry that all. So basically, it's like a lion. If we have the lion raised like a cat and knows who comes, and this is what we start. We need to more going out there and basically like teach people and learn ourselves because everything, all the barriers are education. Education. And the more we into love, the more we come up with great ideas. Sometimes I come with some reasoning. Some people look at me and say, hey, you're intelligent. I'm not. I'm a receiver. I just receive. I talk and I shut up. And I realize how my mind works. People think like, yo, you brilliant. I'm not. Because I know how it works. I just shut my mouth, focus on the idea and listen. And I practice in what I call a non-thinking state of mind. And I just pull in. I'm not intelligent at all. I'm just receiving time. So I believe each of us can raise ourselves above, and be God.
That takes work, though. That's what people don't want to do. And us even coming here, I had to walk to come here. I could have gotten a bus called Uber, but that takes willpower. And we're literally in a condition where they give us money so we can do things that doesn't benefit us. Like even eating. Some days I'll eat. I'm not even really hungry. I know my body might need it, but I'm just eating. So it's like if this information that we're coming into, the reason why it's resonating with us is because this is what it's supposed to do. Like the people who stay in their lower states their whole lives, get arrested, get their money taken from them. If they don't reach this information, either they didn't want to or it wasn't meant for them.
They don't want to work to break their cycle.
They don't want to work to break it because it's hard work.
Right. This is what they know. This is what they've lived with forever. They don't want to change that.
Yeah. Like tying into what you said, we all are energy centers. And I don't know if you guys know about like the Akashic Grid. Yes. And that, I never read it, but I think that's truth. Like the information we're gaining, it'll help us, if we implement it correctly into life, it'll help us live a better quality of life. We can pass it on to our heirs. And I just think it can be a real beautiful, simple cycle, but the work has to be done. Like you can't just wake up and then put on the TV because we're not learning anything on here. You know what I mean? If we put ourselves in the books, be around people like this daily, we're not like, let somebody tell me anything negative. I don't care what you're telling me because what I'm finna do is gonna be great. You know what I mean? It's like you're just like that doubt in my mind that's manifested in the physical form that's trying to stop me from going to that higher self. So I think it's really like important that we learn all these little things. So then pass it on to our seeds.
So what I wanted to add on is, when you're young, you're sensitive to others. I receive you. I receive you. And sometimes, if you don't have the element or the knowledge to understand, like what the brother just showed, how the world perceives you, can make a difference in how I perceive myself. Yeah. And that's why there's a cycle of 7 years. The first 7 years, you will not know who you are, but it's the first 7 years that are really most important. The second one, you develop your soul. The third one, you develop the mental. Every cycle of 7 years. And exactly at the 8 years, every kid have a dream. 7, exactly 8. Tesla, back there, dream about the Niagara Falls. And guess what? Guess what you end up doing after the years? You don't know? Nikola Tesla.
Oh, Tesla. Oh, yeah.
It was above it. It was back there, like in Europe, thinking about the Niagara Falls. He's the one bringing electricity in the fall as hydro power to create it. And it has an 8 years. And if we go back when we were young, we realize that we had a dream. That dream was sometimes the purpose of a lifetime. Every cycle of 7, the next one is the every cycle of 7.
So the contract has to be between two parties, so understanding that to be able to connect our ears on that channel.
Right.
So we all be in the same ego.
Exactly. Well, it's easy for kids.
Because the Europeans giving us the ability to forget about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. It's easy for kids, like for young, like for instance, my father. I realized all I needed just to look at him. Because there was a process. Not a chemical, but an energy coming from him. Mm-hmm. At that time, I didn't have the word to understand, but there's a part of me that knows. I assumed that I didn't have the word to express it as it did. Now I do today to put emotional use to word. But all I needed just to see him. And I realized that I stand like he used to. I talk like he does. How I'm going to copy all that?
Mm-hmm. Cindy, can I add on to that?
Please.
My father and I was having a conversation a while ago, and we were talking about just him as a father. And he was basically saying, I guess I'm not a father, so I don't know, but he was basically expressing, most parents don't know if they're a good parent or a bad parent. And I was telling my dad, don't even worry about that. You were physically here. There's people, their father was never there, so they have nothing to base themselves off of, to compare anything else to. So I was telling my dad, like, just your mere presence. My dad has a face like this. So in the house, I wasn't trying to see him.
I was scared of your dad.
Just him existing was the authority figure keeping me in check.
Right.
He didn't have to say much, like at all. So like you said, just him being there, his energy just being there, I was able to just reflect it, like learn my place in the house. I'm beneath this guy.
He's calling the
He's
shots.
6, yeah, he's the one I don't want to mess with.
That's huge.
So that forced me, in a way, I respect and love my mother, but that even solidified respect this shorter woman because this guy.
And what was your father really doing? Reinforcing your mother's rules.
She was the L, the law creator. He was the babe just enforcing the law.
Mm-hmm.
Like
with a look.
Yeah.
His dad is scary looking.
My dad jokes all the time. He's so kind. He's one of the most kind-hearted people I know, but I still don't want to mess with him.
Yeah.
Just mere presence.
Mm-hmm. I was afraid that if your mom sent me to go bring something to your dad, I didn't even want that job. I didn't even have to say anything to him.
He said yes all the time. I still don't want to ask him. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm boss, sorry, you're right. So I was always
the type to always laugh in the black face.
That was the same thing with Jimmy, and the same thing with Grandpa Larry. It's just Grandpa Larry's voice would just thunder through the house, and it was very low and calm. He never yelled at me, and I would just cry. If he knew I did something wrong, I would be crying already.
Hey,
Yeah.
It's the fear of
And what was he gonna do? He didn't do nothing but talk to me, but it was the presence.
It's that energy. You want to deal with that energy. Now let's take that concept, right? Just to throw a freaking wrench in what we're talking about. Let's take that simple concept of that energy, and let's confront these Europeans in the peace movement. I'm just saying.
All right. Do you guys want to end this? Do you want to end the conversation because we've been on for an hour and a half?
Let's end the conversation with a recap of some things we talked about. So I'll share some of the things I learned. Right, the importance of mating according to the zodiac. The importance of choosing the correct words when presenting the idea of polygamy. And just realizing, every person is different. And my contract with someone may not be the same as your contract with someone else. And I can't judge you for that, and you can't judge me for that. It's just, that's what it is. And just to hear everyone's opinion or perspective on it just felt good to just hear and see, and we're not arguing. Because I personally see these conversations all the time on Facebook. It's just
nasty.
Sides. What are you choosing sides for? There's no side. Either you're with the nation or you're not. It don't matter if you're monogamous, polygamy, polyamorous. If you're helping the nation, I don't care what you're doing at home. So that's something.
That's all personal preference.
So yeah, I think I learned what it was the same thing you said, but because we cannot channel ourselves our energies and pretty much contract that we have with each other when you guys first met. Because the channel that we have and the understanding that we got from this is like they have to be able to get involved the Europeans into our lives to overrule everything, every decision of the contract that previously me and the other person already committed. So therefore, given the jurisdiction for them to be able to rule in our life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there should be no problem whatsoever. Like you guys got to be on understanding and be in a state of mind, pretty much of. Like, if you guys committed a contract of creating an heir into this life, you guys should just work around it so him not to be able to be hurt and for him to be able to be a state of mind, to be able to find who he is as a person.
As a female, what I took away from this is more understanding of the burden that men would have to have multiple wives and more understanding to be observant of the practice in its successful state, not in what people tell me is supposed to be. So in studying that and pursuing just the knowledge of it, that doesn't mean I have to do it. I would encourage other women to study it and talk to other nationals that practice it. And successfully is the most important part.
Boy.
Successfully. Actually talk to people that either come from nations that practice it, and so they've seen it up close, or that practice it themselves.
And they do it the right way, not in lower self.
Yes.
What they see on TV.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily, but open up the lines of communication in a respectful manner, as we did today. It doesn't mean you have to do it. Just try to come to an understanding.
Because the way how I used to look at it, from lower self. I used to like it's fun. I have this one tonight, tomorrow night. It looks fun. Yeah. That's how I used to look at it. But
it's a huge burden for a man.
It's a contract. It's basically business.
So what I got from this, I feel like there's a lot of things that go into like trust issues, and the contract redefines the trust. So
not to cut you off, but also the woman have to be conscious also.
Both parties. And that's why I said you can't force somebody that's not seeing this for what it is into it. There's no amount of arguing and hitting heads that you could do to change their mind. Because if you somehow pressure them into getting in the situation, it's just going to damage the business. Yeah.
Were you finished?
That's one thing.
Oh, he wasn't finished.
Yeah, I like that.
Yes. To elaborate on that, that's why when you look at women and we can define that women going through the nonsense with the man who's not in their life and stuff like that, men have been damaged to the point that the trust has been probably exceeded to the point where it's like indisputably like thrown out the window, and it's just like you're left there with nothing.
I think both sides have bad
Both
credit.
sides, they do
Yeah.
have bad
Yeah,
credit.
for different reasons.
Mhm.
And with that, the contract actually redefines everything with that if the person, both parties have to sit down and actually reevaluate their wants to establish their kingdom.
Mhm.
That's all I say.
No, what I'm saying is I learned a lot because yes, I heard about polygamy before, and you guys bring perspective from a personal standpoint, and then basically I learned. I mean, we're not really learning. We learn. And I heard something about love. Love is just like a chemical energy. It's a position, it's a duty, it's something else. And then I came back today, but there's one thing I heard when you said it's unconditional. It's a duty. And then I remember in the Bible, it says, love thy neighbor like thyself, right? It's impossible. And it's in the Bible. I cannot love any person here like I love myself because it implies me treating me the way I treat myself. Sometimes I drink, sometimes I smoke, and I do things according to what needed. If we go out right now, we want to eat, and we have all the food in the world, even for the experience, we're not going to choose anything. We're not going to drink the same water with the same temperature room. So it's impossible, like I said, and the Bible says it. Love thy neighbor like thyself. And what we do, we love our kids the way we love ourselves. Impossible. We try to enforce and live our dream today. Conflict. We love our wife, our friend. I will love ourselves, and it's psychologically impossible.
Literally, that's what breeds like people turn into alcoholics.
And the Bible says something else.
Don't
judge nobody.
Please, that again goes to the zodiac. If, as an Aries, I'm more independent, that's my position.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And if, let's say, my sister's a Cancer, Cancers are more like
Codependent.
So as a parent, you can't treat the Aries the way you treat the Cancer, because you can't love them the same. They're two different human beings. So that was beautiful. That was great.
Want to close out?
Well,
If anyone else wants to share.
I just want to say shout out to a few people in chat. Shout out Jamila, Hatu Mama, Aja, we miss you, Adriana, miss you.
Shout-outs.
I took a look at the chat. It's pretty good. I'm happy.
So, thank all of you for being in your higher self and able to let each other finish and not argue. Well, my position's right and you're wrong because of this, and we're so emotional we can't even have a conversation. That is very crucial in the Moorish movement because we already know how people get emotional about everything.
That was great absorption.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments down below.
I just remember something. So when I used to visit, when I was still in high school, I do go to school, my mom used to send me to the Bronx for a month to visit my aunts. And while I was there, I was on the porch one day sitting, and it was in the summer, and I was looking across the neighbor's yard, and there's a female sweeping the yard. There was one attending to the garden, and he was just on the veranda like this with a green of paper and his teeth. And my aunt would always go at him like, "Look, his name was David." He's like, "Oh, look at him. You think he's all that because his name is David." And he used to curse my everybody in the whole block. He used to hate him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But he will go to work. He'll stay home, do whatever. He'll come back in. And when I went back to Jamaica, she had called my mom, and I talked to her, and she was like, "Oh, one of them got pregnant now. So no, now the other one's working. One stays home." And it's like, what type of life is this? So when our people see it in happening around them, they demonize it right away. Like it's just ugly. Yeah. It's like they don't want no part of it because they like, which woman will do this? Right? Yeah. You know, without even knowing. Yeah. So this is good to put it out there so that people know, like, it's not like that. It's not thinking
Yeah,
this
'cause
type of way.
A lot of
You know what I
people have the mentality of, I want 2 and 3 wives, so I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Or I want to have, 3 husbands, so I don't have to do anything, and I get to sit pretty and just enjoy my life while everybody gets to do my dirty work. That's not.
But the thing is that my aunt had asked her, they ever fight, they argument, and she said, like, they're the best neighbors. They don't conversate a lot with people. They more stick to themselves. But never no fight, no parties. Like, they just stay by themselves.
Peaceful.
You imagine you got everything you want.
It's pretty much an expectation out of you when you get everything you want. Like, when you get those positions, like the more talking before, like I told them, I was like, it wasn't real personal, but it was to the point where it's like, I told them, I used to think that Grand Chief was something that I wanted to be, and he was like, you should be, like, the word jealousy came into play. And he told me, he said, you should be jealous about the work I do. You should be jealous that the people who come at me and ask me for help, and secondly, I don't have time for myself. Like, with that hierarchy, with that title, there's a lot that's going to be demanded of you, and a lot of responsibility as a man in general, whatever you want to call it, man. And that stuff right there, you have to be ready for.
I told you, it could be the most risky position.
It's a risky position, and it's not something that we can say is like something we're ready for. Once it hits us in the face, it's like, oh shit, reality. Yes, it's like I have to deal with anxiety from this person needing this from me at this point, being on time, being punctual, not saying the wrong things. It destroys like barriers. As long as you're ready to fix them, you fix them.
No, continue. I'm just holding my hand up so so I just wanted to say, be careful what you wish for, because once you decide, the universe works quick. And if you're not ready for what you asked for, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in so much trouble.
That's why you shouldn't fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
You should make
Walk it like you talk it.
Walk it like that.
And just be honest with yourself and people around you. And be ready for what you're talking about. Don't just put all these things out into the universe and call them onto you, because when it gets to you and you're not ready, you're gonna ruin everything you ever wanted.
Yeah.
All right, well, we gotta wrap it up.
If anybody wants more discussions like this, write in the comments below, and we'll continue this open discussion.
All right, Morris.
Move here.